One morning, you looked out at your yard and the birds were gone. Not all at once. Not in a dramatic departure you would have noticed. It happened the way most disappearances in nature happen, gradually, quietly, while you were not paying attention. The feeder is full. The water is fresh. The weather has not changed. And yet a yard that used to be full of cardinals, chickadees, finches, and wrens is now mostly silent. The branches that held singers in April are bare in posture. The feeder that needed refilling twice a week now lasts the better part of a month. Most people assume the birds simply moved on, that they found a better food source, that something natural and unknowable shifted in the local ecology. The truth is far more specific, far more personal, and far stranger than most people realize. Birds do not leave yards randomly. They leave because something changed. And in the overwhelming majority of cases, what changed was not the yard. It was something the people inside the house did or stopped doing, without ever realizing it was a signal. There are 3 mistakes that almost every backyard birder in the United States makes at some point. The first one is invisible. The second one feels like a kindness. And the third one, the one most people never connect to the disappearance of their birds, is the one I want you to remember when this video ends. Welcome back to Birds Are Watching. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, because what you're about to learn will change the way you look at every bird that visits your yard. Stay until the end. What the birds were telling you in the weeks before they left is something almost no one notices in the moment. And it is the part of this story I think you will not forget. Tonight, we are going into the disappearance, the hidden, week-by-week process by which a yard quietly loses the birds it had, and what the birds were trying to communicate the entire time. Number 1. The seed that became invisible to them. The first mistake is the one almost no one connects to bird absence, because it is not about what you stopped doing. It is about what stayed exactly the same for too long. Seed in a feeder is not a permanent offering. It is a perishable resource that birds evaluate continuously, and Cornell Lab of Ornithology's Project Feeder Watch has documented across decades of citizen science data what happens when seed sits on. It absorbs ambient humidity. It develops surface oils that go rancid in sunlight. It begins, within a window of 7 to 14 days in most American climates, to lose the scent profile that draws birds in. A bird approaching your yard from 100 feet away is not reading a label. It is reading a chemical signature in the air. When that signature degrades, the feeder stops being detectable to the species that find food primarily by scent and visual association, which, in much of North America, includes most of the songbirds you want to attract. The feeder still looks full. To the birds, it has become invisible. This is the mistake that almost no one catches, because the feeder is not empty. There is no obvious signal that anything is wrong, but the birds have stopped reading it as food. The fix is mechanical. Empty the feeder weekly, even if it is not finished. Discard any seed that has clumped, darkened, or developed any visible film. Refill with fresh seed. Within 3 to 5 days of a real refresh, the birds will begin to return because the signal they had stopped picking up is back in the air. Number 2. The cleaning you did not know was overdue. The second mistake is a quiet one, and it feels like the opposite of a mistake. You hung the feeder, you filled Italiano, you watched the birds come. You did not clean it. The American Bird Conservancy and the National Audubon Society have both issued long-standing guidance on this. Drawn from documented outbreaks of feeder-borne disease across the United States, an unwashed feeder becomes, within weeks, a contamination point for salmonellosis, trichomoniasis, and avian. What happens next is not what most people expect. The birds do not get sick at your feeder and die there visibly. They get sick, fly elsewhere, and tell the rest of the local population through alarm calls, through avoidance behavior, through a complex set of cues researchers are still mapping that the location is no longer safe. Your feeder does not just lose individual birds, it loses its reputation. Audubon's published guidance is straightforward. Clean every 2 weeks in dry weather, every 3 to 5 days in warm and humid conditions. A 9-to-1 solution of water and white vinegar. Scrub. Rinse completely. Dry. What the birds detect. Once you have cleaned a feeder that was overdue, is the disappearance of a chemical signal they had associated with danger. The shift is subtle to the human eye and dramatic to the bird's nervous system. Within a week of a real cleaning of a long-neglected feeder, the species that had quietly stopped visiting will often return. Not because they had forgotten you, because they had remembered the warning. Number 3. The cat that did not have to make a kill. The third mistake is the hardest one for most American backyard birders to hear, because it is rarely about their own behavior. It is about a cat. The American Bird Conservancy estimates that free-ranging domestic cats kill between 1.3 and 4 billion birds in the United States every year, the single largest human-caused source of bird mortality on the continent. But here is what the numbers do not capture. A cat does not have to kill a bird to drive birds out of a yard. It only has to be seen. Researchers studying what they call landscape of fear ecology have documented that the visual presence of a predator, even an unsuccessful one, is enough to reorganize the behavior of entire local bird populations. A cat that walks through your yard once a day, even if it never catches anything, is a signal the birds in your neighborhood are reading and communicating. If the cat is yours, and outdoor access is part of its routine, the simplest intervention is to keep it inside during dawn and dusk, the two windows in which birds feed most intensively and are most exposed. If the cat is a neighbor, a motion-activated sprinkler placed near the feeder is the most humane and effective deterrent available, recommended by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and multiple state wildlife agencies. It does not harm the cat. It teaches the cat that your yard is unpredictable, which is exactly the signal a cat needs to seek a different route. What the birds register in the weeks after a predatory presence is removed is the absence of fear cues they had been responding to without your knowledge. The yard becomes available again. The birds come back. Most people who have driven birds out of their yards through a cat, their own, or a neighbor's, have no idea that is what happened. The cat may never have caught a single bird. The cat did not have to. Number 4. The water that went wrong. The fourth mistake is the one that, in summer across much of the United States, accelerates the disappearance faster than any other. It is the bird bath. Birds need water for 2 reasons. They drink it, yes, but more critically, they bathe in it. A bird that cannot bathe regularly loses the structural integrity of its feathers, which compromises flight, thermal regulation, and predator evasion. The bath in your yard is not optional infrastructure. What goes wrong is invisible. A bath that has not been refreshed in several days, especially in warm weather, becomes within 48 to 72 hours a breeding site for mosquito larvae, bacterial film, and, in some U.S. regions, the algae that produce avian toxic compounds. The bird approaching that bath is reading the same kind of chemical signal. It reads on the seed. What looks to you like a full, available bird bath looks to the bird like a contaminated water source. Aedes abu. The yard loses a critical resource without any visible indication that anything is wrong. The fix is simple. Change the water every 2 to 3 days. Scrub the basin weekly. Add motion, a small dripper or wiggler, available for under $20 at most U.S. wild bird supply stores, that keeps the surface broken and prevents larval colonization. What you will find, within a week of restoring a clean and moving water source, is that the species you thought you had lost begin to reappear at the bath before they reappear at the feeder. The water draws them back first. The feeder is what they stay for. But what comes next is the part of this story I want you to think about carefully, because it is not about a mistake at all. Number 5. The change in your routine that the birds noticed before you did. By the time most people realize the birds have gone, several weeks have usually passed. What the birds noticed first was something almost no one ever thinks about. It was a change in you. Research from Cornell's Bird Cognition Lab and from long-term studies on songbird habituation has documented that backyard birds, particularly titmice and corvids, learn the schedules and movement patterns of the humans who share their territory. They know when you come outside in the morning. They know when the kettle goes on. They know which door you use and what time the lights come on, in which windows. When that pattern changes, when you take a 2-week vacation, when a family member moves out, when a new work schedule shifts, when you walk to the mailbox, the birds register the change. For some species, the response is neutral. They adjust their own behavior and continue visiting. For more cautious species, the response is withdrawal. The known human variable has become unknown again, and the yard reverts, in their assessment, to a place that has not been freshly validated. This is the mistake that is not really a mistake. It is the cost of being a person whose life moves and changes. But it is one of the most common reasons American backyard birders find their yards suddenly quieter, and one of the easiest to fix, because the fix is simply consistency. Go outside at the same time. Move the same way near the feeder. Give the yard 30 minutes of undisturbed activity in the early morning. The birds were not punishing you. They were updating their model. The model can be restabilized within 2 to 3 weeks. Number 6. What the birds were telling you the entire time. I want you to think about something for a moment. Across the 5 mistakes we have covered, the stale seed, the dirty feeder, the cat, the contaminated water, the changed routine, there is a single observation that pulls all of them together. The birds did not leave because the yard stopped being good. They left because the yard stopped being clear. What a healthy backyard bird population is doing every day is reading a steady set of signals from the environment around them. The signals are about food, about safety, about predictability, about whether the humans nearby are the kind of presence that can be lived alongside without risk. When one of those signals becomes unreliable stale seed, contaminated water, a new predator, a changed human pattern, the bird does not throw out its model. It just files the yard, quietly, under uncertain. And birds, especially the cautious ones, do not return to uncertain yards while there are clearer ones available. The disappearance, you noticed, was not a verdict on the yard. It was a verdict on the clarity of the relationship. This is what makes the rebuilding of a backyard bird population so much faster than most people expect. You are not starting from zero. You are not luring back animals that have forgotten you. You are clarifying a signal those same birds, many of them the exact individuals you used to see, have been waiting to receive again. The cardinal that left in May has not gone far. The chickadee that stopped visiting the feeder still lives within 200 yards of your yard. The wren is in your neighbor's hedge. They are still reading you. They are still updating the file. And the morning you make the changes, fresh seed, a clean feeder, a sprinkler that resets the cat's route, a fresh moving bath, a routine the yard can predict again, the file updates one more time. The next time you stand at your kitchen window and a bird you had not seen in months reappears at the feeder, remember what you now know. It is not a new bird. It is the same bird, returning to a signal that has finally become clear again. The yard had not lost the birds. The birds had been waiting for the yard to come back into focus. You have been the variable the entire time. Tell me in the comments, has there been a time when birds disappeared from your yard, and then one specific change brought them back? What was the change? What was the first bird that returned? How long did it take? I read everyone. I'll see you in the next one.